I'm curious. I just talked about my experience when I was young, and I was older than you at this point, right? I was 21 in a room full of these very highly successful business people. Did you have a point in your life, Marko, where you were like thinking of yourself as, I'm too young to be in this room? You know, who are these people I'm hanging out with? Are they going to look down on me? Like, did you have a moment like that, or no?
Absolutely. And as you were speaking about the first event you attended, I just, went straight to the first event I ever attended, which was actually with my uncle, because my parents, for whatever reason, didn't want to go or didn't think I was serious about going. So like I convinced my uncle, let's go to this convention. I booked the ticket. And to this day, one of the gentlemen that I've met there, he's part of my advisory team, and we're definitely still in contact. So I had the same emotions, I had the same feelings. I think I was about 14 at the time when I went to this convention. And as you said, like, you're the only young person there. You have no idea what you're doing. You're going up to speakers and you're going up to people trying to engage, trying to provide value, and trying to create this perception of like, hey, I'm enough. And that's also when I started wearing suits, because it's like, if I can portray myself to have a certain, value, maybe people will believe it. And until I get to that point, obviously it takes time. You can't just become, have a certain mindset and have a business overnight. But I can definitely relate to that story.
How long did it take for you to move from feeling uncomfortable in that room to feeling like you did belong? Like, I want to just touch on what you just said because I think it's really important. You started to change the way that you presented yourself in order to fit in with a group of people that you wanted to be around, who you wanted to learn from, who you wanted to garner respect from. You didn't just continue showing up in a white t-shirt, right? Like even right now, like you're home, yet you decided you're going to put the dress shirt on, you're going to put the tie on, you're going to put the vest on. Like you present yourself in a very specific way. And
Yeah.
that is all about how you brand yourself. And I know you're big on branding. You talk about branding all the time. Everyone, you need to go follow Marko on LinkedIn and probably other platforms too. But I follow him on LinkedIn. Your branding is spot on. Like if I knew at 18 what you know, Marko, let me just say you're going to have a bright future, brother. And you're already having a bright life now. It's only going to get better. But I'm curious, when did it move from being uncomfortable in those rooms to feeling more at home?
Absolutely. So, I mean, there's I think about it in two ways. One is having knowledge, and then one is applying. So the first stage of becoming, as like a real expert is actually, I was listening to hundreds of podcasts at a time, and just consuming as much information as I can regarding strategies, reading books, listening to people, asking questions. And that also came back to my podcast. At the time, I had a show, and I was just learning and engaging with so many people at such a rapid rate. So that was the first kind of my building my self-esteem and confidence, and also my ability, right? Because there is that certain business acumen that you have to have when you're in those rooms. And the second thing was actually the internships and actually getting into business. Because it's one thing reading about funnels, it's one thing reading about marketing, it's one thing reading about sales, but actually to go and deliver it and to build out successful funnels and successful marketing strategies and go onto sales calls and communicate and sell, that's a totally different thing. And so I believe that, to answer your question, it was actually applying that knowledge in a business environment, and number one, consuming that and getting to a certain basis and getting some basics within business.
Yeah, no, well said. There's a big difference between learning something and then learning more and learning more and learning more and learning more. Let me tell you, the biggest thing that I see at conferences, at events, even at the National Speaker Association, the number one thing you see is people who learn and learn and learn some more and go back and back and back, and they have their notebook and they take the world's most copious amount of notes, and they find much pride in the notes that they take. And they're like, Brandon, look at these notes I got. I can share these notes with you. But my number one question to these people is, what's the last piece of knowledge that you actually applied and took action on? And people don't like to hear this, right? Some people, it's a wake-up call, but other people, they're like, well, I have a plan to do this and this and this when this perfect set of scenarios happens. And there's a lot of people who learn and learn and learn, but they never do. And that's the big difference, brother. And age makes no difference here. If you learn something, freaking apply it, right? And this is why it comes down to listening and learning the right things. And I have some follow-up questions for you there too. But apply what you learn, right? Take action. That's the only reason why
And
I
be
don't.
humble enough to also accept that learning, right? And that feedback. The other day, I was having an Uber driver, got into an Uber, and the guy, I asked him, like, what is your passions? Are you building a side hustle? He's like, yeah, I'm starting this business, and I'm going to do this work with the government and this. And I basically just said to him, like, well, when is that happening, or how is that happening, and what's your timelines, and what are your milestones? And he suddenly just got so defensive and just started like ridiculing me and saying, like, Marko, like, what do you know? Or like, and so he knew nothing about me, but I was just asking genuine questions in a nice manner just to try and support the guy. But he just got so defensive and just started breaking me down and saying, like, and so for me, I think that was part of my learning, is being humble enough. And especially when you're young, you think you know everything until you meet these amazing, minded people. And it's like, take the feedback and apply it. And most people don't. And I think, that brings back me to your point that you just mentioned.